Here we go. God, he said, I like your Christ and not your Christians. He said that because sometimes our actions don't reflect our faith or what we believe in.
Or our walk.
Our walk.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Daily Grind, and I'm back with my boy Odell. Say what it is.
What's good? What's good? What's good? We here.
And as always, we like to motivate and encourage and make sure that we're doing what we need to do and asking the right questions, because that's what we're here to do. Just provoke the questions. You find the answers, and we'll help you get there. We got a lot of topics on today, so let's get to the first topic. What do we got on deck for the talking to today? Oh, if you haven't and you're watching on live, this is Daily Grind. And we're tuned in just to talk about some topics that we feel are important. Yeah, let me take these headphones out of my ear.
Let me turn these down some more.
Also, if y'all have any questions, please leave them in the DMs. Okay. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to leave them in either Odell's DM or my DM. We're going to talk about some heavy topics. So what do we got on the agenda for today?
All right, so today we're going to talk about Christians and politics. Can we get along?
Can we get along? Now, we talking about church and state. Let's break down that. You had a very interesting observation on that.
Here's the thing. Like, there's nothing against Christians actually, getting into politics. I actually encourage it, but I'm gonna break down some history about this. In first century Christians actually, during the time of Rome, they were not in politics. Actually, Rome was killing Christians, to be precise.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of Christians being in politics back in the first century was frowned upon. It was not something that Christians wanted to do. At that time, Rome had their so-called god called Caesar. And of course, Christians were not going to bow down to Caesar. And on top of that, Rome was about wars and things like that. And Christians at that time, they didn't believe in wars. As time progressed, I would say probably around the 4th century AD, when Constantine became emperor, he was what we would call a Christian sympathizer.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of stopped the whole killing and bloodshed of Christians and kind of was more accepting to the Christian culture. And actually, at his death, before he died, he actually became a Christian.
Oh, wow.
So the idea that Christians and politics, coincide is actually something that should be done. But here's where we should draw the line. And this is what I feel. When you start to idolize and put your politics above Christ and the gospel,
yes,
that's where we have to talk. That's
where we get the word, like, when people like, I'm a patriot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a patriot Christian, this is God's country. And I'm like, well, this is God's planet, first and foremost. So let's not try to tie God into a political party. And I think a lot of times we do that, where, I don't even subscribe to either party, Democrat or Republican.
Right.
I view myself as a free thinker. Like, there's certain things I agree with on this side and certain things I agree with on that side.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, I'm an ambassador for Christ. So my heavenly home is what I'm ambassadoring for.
Exactly. and it's funny you say that, because even when Jesus walked on this earth, Pharisees and scribes tried to get him into the whole political game by asking them a simple question: who should we pay our taxes to?
Yes.
And Jesus was very, very skillful in saying, pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar's,
and give God what is God's. And I always thought, like, I had it when I was doing the youth pastor thing, I had a message on that. And it was basically on because he looked at the coin, he said, whose image is on this coin? And it was Caesar's. And then when he said, give Caesar what is Caesar's and give God what is God, whose image are we made in? You know what I mean? So when he says that, we're giving ourselves to God.
Mm-hmm.
Give Caesar the monetary. That God don't want nothing to do
Right.
with what you do here.
Right.
That brings to the question: should the church have a 501c3 and not pay taxes? But we're gonna get into that a little bit later on.
So now let's also dive into the idea that, you know, back in biblical times there were actually biblical figures that were a part of the what we would call politics, but back in those days I don't think they used the term politics. It was more like government, kings, queens, and stuff like that. Look at Joseph. His life and how he, you know, progressed. He became the second in command to the king at that time, which means he had a political position.
He did.
He had a very strong political position,
but he still maintained his faith.
He still maintained his faith. He made sure, and he made sure that the things that his values, his core values, his Christian values, his things that his father Joseph taught him. I mean, not Joseph. I mean his father. His father was Jacob. His father Jacob taught him was like, you know, the Christian values, the Christian walk, Christian faith, believing God and knowing God and knowing who He is. Like all that stuff was still instilled within him. Like you notice. He was being pursued by the by the king's wife, but he resisted. He resisted. So all those values and everything there, like we could talk politics from that standpoint. There's a lot of politicians that are doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing, but
when you look at it, and I heard this interesting observation about government. Is that we have to realize that that's their careers.
Yeah.
And they do anything to make sure that your career grows. And that's what we got to start looking at the fruit of the tree.
Right.
And seeing how they are. I don't walk around judging anybody. You know what I mean? Even, you know, we see people do bad things. You judge it by their fruit. But I don't condemn a person as being evil by default.
Right.
You just watch what they do. And I think when you watch politicians and they say they're Christian, quote unquote, but they do things that are anti-Christian, we find things where, well, he's doing it because it's better for this way, but he's still a Christian. I'm not taking his Christianity away from him.
Right.
I'm taking that decision and saying, I don't think Christ would do this. Or when we had the old bands, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
I don't think he would do that. And so when you do things like that, that leaves your Christianity up for question that anybody can ask. You say you're a Christian. Well, Gandhi, like I said last episode, Gandhi said, I like your Christ and not your Christians. He said that because sometimes our actions don't reflect our faith or what we believe in.
Or our walk.
Our walk.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I could bring in more biblical figures like Mordecai, King David, Daniel and his friends, even the exiles in Jeremiah 29 when Jeremiah basically told them they have to go into captivity under Babylon and follow their way of living. You know, you're following government, you're following this, you're following that, but they still held on to their core Christian values and their beliefs. So, like I said, it's not a thing that I don't believe that Christians in politics Christians should stay away from politics. I'm a firm believer that you should engage. You should want to know what's going on in this world, because a lot of the laws and a lot of the decrees and ordinances that are passed can somewhat have an effect on you actually spreading the gospel.
It can.
You know what I'm saying? We as Americans, we are very privileged to have that right to be able to speak freely about Christ. There are a lot of countries that don't have that right. So just the mere fact for us to be able to do that shows that there is a need for a Christian to actually be in that
sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And you know, again, this goes to pride, and I know for myself, pride could be not to say it like this. I'm a talented individual, just as you are. Very talented in what we do, and pride has a way of changing. It's like a dial.
Yeah.
The better you get at something, or the higher you achieve something, the more your morals come into question because, I can do it all by myself. Right. I'm good. I don't need God. Right. I have the answers. Right. And I found even for myself that me questioning, am I becoming self-reliant? I need to find who God is. And that goes into politics because when you become something like the president, a senator, a governor, you've reached this acclaim with people that you're like, I can do it. I'm the only one that can make this state be better. I'm the only one that can make this country do better. Sorry about that. Session ended for me. Anyway, but I'm the only one that can do these things, and you're like, wait a minute. God put you in this position, and you forgot that God put you in that position.
Right.
And when you get to that point, you start doing things that just doesn't reflect God. So I think, like, if I was to be in politics, not that I'm all that interested, I would only do it as a means to an end to change things. If I were to be in politics, having Christ at the center of it, you should always have a council of people that hold you accountable. So that yes, you're doing stuff for your constituents and doing things for other people, but make sure that you're not losing yourself in the process of doing that. Jesus, I mean, even though he wasn't a political figure, he was a political figure. He was known as a rebel. He made questions, and being as sinless as he was, he understood the burden it took to actually have to bear that cross and die on it. It's not going how can I remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he prayed, God, take this cup away. He knew the burden that he held, and he could have easily been like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna take this fame and run.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's for the better good. God.
He knew his will, and his will was not his will. It was the will of God.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's perfect you say that, you know what I'm saying? Having people that, you can hold accountable to make sure that you are actually, fulfilling what it is that you need to do is totally, important. Another thing that you got to also, be considerative of is when you are finding yourself that holding your political views or values higher than your Christian values, that's a point where you need to evaluate yourself, because a lot of times when you are professing yourself to be a Christian and you want to go evangelize and you want to go talk to people, if that person is to actually see that, oh, you're political, you're this, that can somewhat hinder your evangelism, your opportunity to present Christ, because that could be like a stumbling block for that person, because all they see is, oh, you were that political person, you're this, you're that, so you stand for this. And so you have to always be mindful of, okay, the things that I'm legislating for and that I'm fighting for on the legislative side, how is that going to affect my Christian walk, and how is that going to affect when I'm trying to be a witness to somebody? You know what I'm saying? So always keep those two in mind, and it goes to your point, having people that you can be accountable to as like a wise counsel. You know what I'm saying? So you want that accountability part, but at the same time, you want to make sure what you stand for coincides with the gospel.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So,
and it's a hard place to be, and even with high. Well-known pastors, I understand the plight of being politically correct and things like that. But I miss the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King days. Not to say Malcolm X was the picture of Christianity,
right.
But he knew what he stood for, and he fought for the unjust.
Right.
And as Christians, our job is to fight for one of the aspects of our job is to fight for the unjust. And I feel like, with things like the 501c3, like not paying taxes because of nonprofit and things like that can curtail what you can do and say when it comes to unjust things. You know what I mean? Do I agree with homosexuality? Not, and that is a practice, but I also don't think that people should be persecuted for being homosexual. Yeah. So if somebody, is bashing them, I would come to their defense, because that's unjust. Yeah. Bump what they do. Yeah. It's who they are that I care about. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times as churches we are muted because, you can't say that. You're going to offend somebody if you say that. And I'm not worried about offending somebody. I'm worried about the long term. I want a relationship with these people. I want these people to know that they can be around me and feel safe and protected. Right. Though we may disagree on many things, that's just life. Yeah. We can disagree on 1 + 1, and you may say it's 4, I might say it's 2, but if I can still talk to you and reason about it,
in a respectable way,
there's no reason why, a pastor can't say, I disagree with homosexuality, but I still want you to be part of my church. I still want to talk to you. Yeah. I still want to know who you are, because you as a person are worth something to me.
Exactly.
And we got to respect it. And I think...
and just by doing that, that shows the heart of Christ in you. Because Christ didn't care about your lifestyle. He didn't care that you're a robber or you're a prostitute or you had 7 or 8 husbands. He didn't care about that. He cared about you as a person and getting you to know who he is so you can accept Christ for who he is. Trust me, once you accept him, the change is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
You're going to start to question things. And that's the key. I don't force anybody to change. That's not my job. Right. My job is to be your friend, be your protector. I hope you're my protector. Yeah. And be, for the most part, neighborly. Love you like I love myself. That's what I'm here to do. Mm-hmm. If you start to change on your own, I'm not going to be pushing you. Yeah. Hey, man. And if you don't learn on your own, I'm still not going to be pushing you.
I'm not going to push you, man. I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to converse with you. We can still talk. We can still hash out ideas. And just on the mere fact that I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to put myself in a position where I want you to feel comfortable enough to talk to me and reason with me and share what you're going through, share your opinions, and not have to worry about, he has a political agenda, or he has this. No, it's not. It's nothing to that. Nothing about that. My main thing is to get to know who you are, so that way I can present to you somewhat of a different opinion respectfully, but we can still communicate. We can still converse. We can still break bread together and not make
pause real fast.